Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back or welcome to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. Joining me as my guest co-host this week is Jammin' Justice Justin from TNC SportsTalk, the throw in with Justin. How you doing, bud?
Hey, how you doing? It's been nice outside. Kids
Yeah.
are back in school. How does that make you feel?
Well, we're homeschooling my son, so really there's no change
But
for
now
us.
there's something that to keep them occupied, right? I mean,
Yeah, that
mine.
is true. I mean, except for we've all been sick. That's actually why I didn't record last week because we were going to record a review of SummerSlam last week.
Yeah.
However, I got hit with something around Monday or Tuesday that kept me from doing anything. I recorded one podcast episode last week, and I'm talking about my Cubicle Chat podcast. I recorded on Monday, didn't record anything the rest of the week. And
Yeah.
because my voice just wasn't going to be able to handle it. Even right now, I'm having to, just suck down water. Of course, it's my sparkling ice black raspberry.
Those are good.
Oh yeah,
Those are
and I
good.
got
Yeah.
I got a cup over here waiting for me to crack them open as well.
But
Um,
the kids are in school. It's the summertime. I mean, a lot of things have happened, and it's been a fun summer in professional wrestling, I would say. And we still have a lot more to get to.
yeah, we do. And that's some of the things we want to cover. SummerSlam. We want to also cover Summer Sizzler that's coming up, and a few other things. But first and foremost, though, unfortunately, the wrestling world suffered a tragic loss over the past week, and that is Kevin Sullivan passed away. Now, I know that, Justin, your era, I mean, you don't remember when Kevin Sullivan was an active wrestler.
I don't think I've ever seen him wrestle
Oh,
other than tapes,
oh
like
my goodness. He scared the absolute crap out of me when I was a kid. And at first I was only reading about him in the magazines because he was
right.
out of Florida. And of course, I mean, where I lived in North Carolina, see, like it says on the shirt, and I could not actually see all the Florida stuff at the time. So I was relying on like other people's houses who had like satellite. I was able to watch it at their house, and I was able to see like some of the other shows. They would show the videos of Kevin Sullivan in Florida, and his role um, was that. I mean, he was like the personification of evil. He was supposed to be a Satan worshiper. He was leading. He had this coven, the army of darkness, is what he called it, and he had, basically he was like putting spells on all these wrestlers, and they were
Hmm.
just flat out evil. And then you realize on behind the scenes, Kevin Sullivan himself was actually a very devout Catholic, and so he was not that same person, but he was also the booker behind the scenes as well. And so a lot of those stories that were coming out of Florida, it was him and Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes was one of his main targets back then. But he had, like himself, he had a woman, of course, his wife Nancy Sullivan, and unfortunately, we know what, we know what her name is associated with now, and which is very unfortunate. We had Mark Lewin, who was a veteran wrestler. He was the Purple Haze. You had Bob Roop. He convinced Bob Roop to shave half his head. And when I say half his head, I'm talking like his head, his face, everything. So he
Mm.
had like what you have, with the beard. Now imagine having that beard
Just
only
coming
half
out.
your head, half of it. And the other side, he had like face paint, and he had a lot of other ones. Luna Vachon was actually part of his flock at one point. And of course, later on, he did go into WCW, and he had um, his what was he had like Earthquake came there. He was Shark, and then he had Brutus Beefcake, Ed Leslie, but he was Zodiac. He had another crew there. It wasn't as successful what it was in Florida, but his most successful stable to me, the one I actually liked the most, was the Varsity Club, and that was the one he had Rick Steiner, he had Steve Dr. Death Williams, he had Dan Spivey, and he had Mike Rotunda.
Hmm.
Um, because and they were all legit college athletes. They had all wrestled at their different schools because Mike Rotunda, he was a collegiate wrestler at Syracuse. Of course, Steve Dr. Death Williams was an All-American wrestler and football player, both at Oklahoma. Dan Spivey, I believe, was Florida. Of course, Rick Steiner was University of Michigan. But Kevin Sullivan actually led that crew as well. But once again, he was the booker behind the scenes, and I actually met him 2 years ago at the very first fan fest that I went to in Chillicothe, Ohio.
Yep.
And I actually posted a picture on Facebook. It's me and him and my son and another guy who was like Kevin Sullivan's partner at the time, like his tag team partner, or I guess they had a show together or something. And so yeah, wrestling world definitely, lost a good one, because he was one of the most influential people in wrestling, and if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have a lot of the things we have, which includes, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, the Wyatt family. And I think that, of course, Bray Wyatt, the late Bray Wyatt, his real name, Wyndham Rotunda, he was Mike Rotunda's son. And so now you have Uncle Howdy, who is Taylor Rotunda. Of course, he's known as Bo Dallas. Now he's, got that same influence. And so you can actually feel that. But we were talking about the Wyatt Six or the Wyatt Six or however you want to.
I think it's 6.
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest. You mentioned it. I was just talking to you prior to recording, and it's one of those things where, you could tell the time is just coming, that everyone is starting. My generation have grown up watching wrestling. The people that I grew up watching, and Taker and Hunter and Sean has all retired, and so there are those sentimental moments, but it's also those moments like, you talk about the people who have put wrestling on the map, and Kevin Sullivan's one of them, for the good or for the bad, whatever you want to think about it. Wrestling's on the map because of, influence by him. And there's a lot of people that has implemented his techniques and his style of wrestling and his characters, personas that he's brought to the table. Thanks to him. I mean, you just mentioned Bray Wyatt. I mean, I'm sure Mark Calloway had influential pieces from his character taken apart throughout the 90s from him. You mentioned, this was also a time that you would go run to your nearest bookstore and try to find a wrestling magazine to catch up on weekly events, and you'd probably go in there and look in. If you'd be looking for Kevin Sullivan's name somewhere on the map. I mean, would he be? So you talked about him being like kind of a vicious person, a scary person, to kind of like, well, if you're at ringside and he's coming through, you're kind of like, let me back away.
Yeah.
So I hear stories, like I heard the stories of when Taker made his way to the ring in the 90s, he made children cry.
Mm-hmm.
Was it that type, like that powerful in a sense?
Kevin Sullivan, and excuse me, this is not something I normally do. I normally don't eat while I'm recording, but we had some circumstances which required us to eat late, and I just took on my diabetes medicine. So I apologize to anybody who's having to hear me chew. But Kevin Sullivan, the way Mick Foley described him in his first book, and it was Rip Rogers actually told him this. He said, Kevin Sullivan is the least sympathetic character in our business. Kevin Sullivan could never, ever turn face with what he was doing. Yeah. The Undertaker actually turned face. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Bray Wyatt turned face. And it was kind of Kevin Sullivan was never going to turn face. His flock, I mean, because he was portrayed as being a devil worshiper. I mean, straight up. I mean, that's actually where I learned just from reading some of his interviews, because he's talking about Abu Dadian and Beelzebub and things like that. And I'm like 10 years old reading about this, and so that's a little in-depth religious type stuff.
In that sense, then, and I maybe you disagree with me, but I mean, there has been a lot of great villains in professional wrestling around the world, and I think if how you are explaining him to me is how he actually was on a in-ring persona, character wise, I would put him probably one of the top tier heels of all time, because it is it is easy to be a heel, right? I think it's a lot easier to make people hate you than it is to like you,
Yeah.
right? You can make a room of 500 people turn on you with one word, and that's how simple it is. But to take it to the next level and maintain that, not take it to the level where people just end up loving you, but take it to where they absolutely probably want to, do harm to you. If they ran into you in the street, like, we talk about, I think Roddy Piper, because people talk highly of him being a great heel.
Mm-hmm.
I think people loved him though. Like he was so hated that people end up turning and loving him.
Organically, yeah. Again,
JBL
organically.
though was a good heel when he was the $1 billion, limo casino, limo
Oh,
riding person on
right.
SmackDown, right? So, but you just don't find those essential heel characters in professional wrestling anymore. And it's because of those heel characters that we have faces, that we have the
Mm-hmm.
good guys, and they're just as much important to the storyline, because if they're not getting the fans to hate them, then you don't have a face you don't have that hero on the other side of things. So, um,
Exactly.
great analogy for Kevin Sullivan. Definitely be remembered. Listen, from according to what I was seeing, he took a downhill turn throughout this year, and
He
that's
had
all
he
nature.
had some kind of an accident. I
Yeah.
don't know what the full details were, but his daughter said he had some kind of an accident, and they were hoping that he was pulling through, and they thought he was going to, and all of a sudden it just took a turn for the worst.
So
And
as much as we can, you know, I think there's a fair part of us to be upset, maybe, right? Sad, morseful. But I think it's important to remind people that he lived a thriving life. He impacted the wrestling world. He left.
mm-hmm,
He etched his name into history, and we need to remember to recognize him for what he left behind, whether it's good, whether it's bad, however you want to remember him, because he gave us his all, you know. So it is a sad loss. Um, but I think it leaves room for gratitude to be paid forward.
and I was very grateful to have met him. When I did, he was actually one of the first wrestlers I met there at that fan fest.
I gotta
So,
start going with you to Chillicothe,
well,
start meeting people.
well,
Well, shoot,
um,
man.
about Chillicothe, and I'm just going to say that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time dwelling on that, but I have been
No,
permanently banned from.
are you serious?
Yes, I'm not
Even
going to
as a
go into it.
fan?
I have been permanently banned from all the events, all the anything associated with big time professional wrestling. I'm not going to go into it. Those who heard the interview that I had on the show a few months ago, discussing some of the events in Chillicothe and discussing some of the events of certain promoters from Chillicothe.
Let's do a podcast just
Um,
on that alone. Come
no,
on,
I'm
it's
not. I'm honestly,
oh
I'm not. I'm
man.
dropping it because
Okay,
I'm not even
fair
going to
enough.
give them any peace of mind. Um, but it was, yeah. Unfortunately, when you speak the truth about something, some people don't like it. Yeah. Now, granted, they probably wouldn't know who I was if I walked in the door,
Just
but at the
wear your
same,
mask that you have.
yeah, I could do that, but
Oh gosh.
I'm honestly, I'm not too concerned about it, and I'm not even gonna pay them. I'm not going to give them any more publicity than what, they,
Okay.
but, and I'll talk with you about some of that off air. I thought you actually knew I was banned.
Yeah, it was up in the air. I didn't know the full, what the verdict was, but
Yeah, but
I knew stuff was coming out. But
I have been permanently banned from all those the fan fests up in Chillicothe, which is unfortunate, but they wouldn't know who I am anyway, to be honest with you, because they weren't paying attention to who I was anyway when I was up there helping. But anyway, I'm going to move on now. Uh,
let's go.
so so 2 weeks ago you were on the show. In fact, it was 2 weeks ago today. We were previewing SummerSlam and we were giving all our predictions and what we thought was going to happen. And I think when we were, I had to watch the show the next day. I wasn't able to watch it live because it was
I did
also
too.
it was on my wife's birthday, and I like sleeping indoors, and so that's why I watched it the next day and not on her birthday.
Took my wife
And
out to the Reds game, and we actually sat down right behind the Reds dugout.
really,
And yeah, and it was like, it's not a competitive thing. Okay, I'm not trying to make this personal. I just want to say it's not a competitive thing. I understand people may get opportunities, once in a lifetime opportunities that you can't just unpass. And all I got to say is congratulations to you. Enjoy yourself, have fun. Let me know after you have it. Don't rub it in my face. If I would have loved nothing more but to be at the Friday night SmackDown in Cleveland,
right,
and to be at SummerSlam, all right, regardless wherever you're sitting at, and to be in Baltimore, Maryland Monday night, just hypothetically, and then to get 2 extra tickets, whatever. I would love all that stuff, but I'm not made out of money. I
right,
utilize my time because me and my wife wanted to go out and we enjoyed ourselves. When you sit behind the dugout, literally behind the dugout, at a
right.
Reds game, those are like $200-300 tickets, right? So you get a chance to get a good deal. I got them for like $100 combined, and I'm like, you can't miss it. I had a
No,
great
no,
time,
gosh.
and then I got some really good deals. Only paid $200 for 3 people to go to the Bengals and Buccaneers game last Saturday. And I was sitting right behind the Bengals sideline, like I was on the concourse down on the floor. So I was like, man, those are killer deals. And I'm taking those opportunities because I know I can't go to the regular season game because even nosebleed seats are minimum $100 each.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, through experience 15, 20 years ago with my father, I just absolutely could not see anything, at Qualcomm Stadium where the Chargers and 49ers every year will face each other. But anyways, just don't rub it in. I know you're going to have a good time. I know you got great deals. Congratulations to you. Pick me up a souvenir and, let's talk about it afterwards. But yeah, so I watched SummerSlam the day after, and I could not keep my hands off of social media, unfortunately. Matter of fact, I think when I was messaging you, I watched the main event. I watched the Miz segment with A-Town Under and Jelly Roll.
Right.
And then I watched, the main event. If you don't mind, we like to get started on with the main event.
Sure.
I have a question for you. Maybe this will be
Yeah,
valuable, but
because I remember I texted you my thoughts on the main event
can we
after.
break down the main event for a moment?
Sure. Go
Take
ahead.
away the bloodline, take away Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, and take away the return of Roman Reigns. How was the match between Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa?
The match itself, honestly, like you said, if you take all those other factors, the match itself was fine. You know,
It's obviously not
a
going to be a
little.
5-star match.
No, it's
I
not gonna be a
get
five-star
that.
match. I don't think with Solo, and I think Solo's a good wrestler,
Mhm.
but his particular style, and unfortunately, like the Brute, when your finishing move is basically it's a thumb in the throat. I mean, you're not going to expect like a scientific 5-star match.
Okay.
Now he's gonna give you a really good match. It's not to say he's not a good wrestler, not to say he's not a great wrestler, but with that particular style, I mean, it's almost too brutal, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't leave you enough room for enough action. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
And
he
that's
does
like
high flying and then the
he
thumb.
can
That's
he
pretty much
yeah.
it.
I mean, and even his high flying is kind of brutal.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like he's jumping doing high flying drop kicks, and he's not doing a lot of stuff like you would see back in the day, like the Rock and Roll Express, or even the Midnight Express doing. His high flying. I mean, he's doing a very hard hitting frog splash.
But he doesn't excessively do it like a lot of other athletes who figure
Right.
that they have to do it or do 20 of them in each match. Like he does it in moments where they are meaningful, which I give him credit to
Mm-hmm.
that. So you would say that maybe Cody Rhodes definitely carried the match,
I would
just
say
on a
so.
match
Yeah.
perspective.
And
Um,
but even the match itself, because I remember I texted you, I was like, unfortunately for me, this was like the third installment of Cody versus or somebody
fair
versus
enough.
the
Yeah.
bloodline, and but even the match itself, it was like it finally ended Cody, a whole bunch of of the Cody Cutters,
Yeah.
and it felt too much like what he did against Roman at WrestleMania. And like every other
So
bloodline match, somebody's going to interfere and then somebody else is going to come out. And it's just been, okay, rinse, repeat. And it is a lot of action, but this match was 29 minutes long. And the only reason it was that long is because of all the interference. It's much the same with all the other ones.
and the build up for Roman Reigns. Let's not forget about
Right.
that. Now,
And
the reason why I wanted to break it down was, and I know I've talked to you about this, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about this on the show before. 8 months, and I was on social media that night and over the weekend, and I just noticed a lot of people kind of bashing Solo Sikoa and where he stands at among guys like Cody Rhodes, and he's the sloppy seconds to the bloodline in the sense of the tribal chief. So, but 8 months ago, I remember people saying Solo needs a push, right? I remember flawlessly that people were, the barbarians at the gate saying that Solo Sikoa deserves to have a singles run, to have a push, that he's not being, utilized to his full potential. Let's remind you that he got called up from NXT to be the right-hand man early on to Roman Reigns, where he didn't really have an NXT run.
He was like the enforcer.
This is what's hard about for Solo Sikoa. This does wonders for him because it shows me that he could go toe-to-toe with one of the top dogs in WWE, which is great. He held his own, okay? You had two top dogs on one side of the field that was going up against him, which he's like the third tier, right? Like he's not even a top dog. But the thing is that, I was telling you this, for one, I don't think Hunter would have put him out there in the main event in that formula unless he didn't, if he didn't think he was going to be able to handle himself. So,
I mean, I will agree with Hunter's judgment, with Paul Levesque, with his judgment on that, because he is the one really running things. And he's not like his father-in-law who would just push somebody before they were ready. If he feels like Solo is ready, I have to trust his judgment. I just don't think many fans are going to jump on it because you take the guy, you put him in there, and he's essentially the bodyguard. He's the enforcer. Right. And now all of a sudden he's been elevated to the very top. He goes from being the bodyguard of the man in charge to being the man in charge. And it was done in less than a year. Like you said, 8 months.
Honestly, 3 months. 3 months. He was going free because he stepped in right after Roman Reigns lost and filled in shoes. Now, would have it been a better scenario if maybe he would have won a U.S., a mid-card title?
I think that, honestly, that's what they probably should have done, especially now that the other guys in the bloodline, they have the tag titles. I want to make this
point here because regardless now, the problem that you have with Solo Sikoa is that Roman Reigns and the Usos, the OG of the bloodline, right? They set the bar so high up that is almost impractical for anybody. And except maybe Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's already up there, but it's almost impossible for anybody else along the family bloodline to come in underneath and try to even imitate what they did. Like, Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga and all them, they're down here. The bloodline's up here. And that's because the last 4 years of dominance that they held in the WWE. And you're just not going to, even if you give Solo a mid-card title and you pushed him, I think the best you could have done was let Solo dominate NXT for all those years. Let him bring in Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, right, in NXT and dominate that, and then bring him up when Roman Reigns left. But it's just, you have Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns up here so high, high. I can't even, he's like beyond the ceiling. And then you have a ceiling that you're trying to get Solo Sikoa to reach, and he's nowhere near that yet. I'm not saying that he's not going to get there. He's just not there yet. So you're already kind of harming yourself, putting I understand the storyline, but you're putting yourself in a predicament where, it's almost an unfair match. And now we may see Roman and Solo down the road. And no matter what you do, it could be a good match. I don't think it won't be. I doubt it be a great match because the level that Solo is. Roman Reigns has been facing nothing but the top tier talents of the WWE over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, Edge, Brock, Cody, Cena, and time and time again, he's beaten the top dogs. Well, Solo Sikoa is not a top dog in the WWE.
Well, right now it feels like they got the bloodline off of Timu, and because and the sad thing is, okay, wrestling fans, not just WWE fans. I'm not talking about the ones who WWE is the only wrestling universe. They don't even want to acknowledge that any other wrestling outside of Connecticut exists.
Yeah.
Right. But wrestling fans, especially somebody like Dwaylen, especially, somebody like a lot of my other friends, some of the other wrestling groups I'm part of, they knew all about Tongaloa, all both those. They know all about them, plus Jonathan Fatu, plus Solo Sikoa.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were excited to see them come in. They can tell you how good these guys are. And those guys, they are good. I mean, all four of them are good. And they deserve to be there. But just to kind of force it, into the bloodline thing.
But that is the thing. There was no pre-content about them. Not saying that, Corey Graves and Wade Barrett's not doing a good job on SmackDown trying to fill in content, but even for someone like, I've heard briefly about that. I don't know who they are, but they have made social media headlines before, but there's just not enough about knowing the details. And like I said, if this was a fraction that would have joined or united down at NXT and dominated, I think we would be talking something completely different here. Well,
it's wild because under VKM, you wouldn't have seen them come straight in based on a reputation from outside WWE. Whereas Paul Levesque's bringing them in, and he knows that wrestling fans are going to want to see them based on what they've done outside WWE. It kind of reminds me of the old territory days where they actually would announce, hey, so-and-so is going to be coming to the Mid-Atlantic area. Because I remember when they had these vignettes before the Rock and Roll Express got there, before Magnum TA got there. And they would actually show all these highlights of these matches that were happening a lot of times from like the Mid-South area. And they would talk about, the Matt Superstars coming in, which he never did come in. That was actually kind of weird. But they're like, they're just coming in. So they would rely on the fans knowing who these folks are. And then, of course, Vince McMahon stopped all that. He's like, you don't acknowledge anybody, or it's extremely rare they would acknowledge anybody outside of their particular company.
We don't get a lot of element of surprises either. Because there's the fifth door has been broken down, right? Everything's get revealed. We knew Jade Cargill was coming to the WWE months prior to that. We knew CM Punk was coming back to the WWE months prior.
Well, that was that was rumors, but
to see, there was no rumors about Tongaloa, or even Jacob Fatu. Right? So, I mean, a lot of this was element of surprise, which I felt
there
whether
were
or not you
some
noticed them
rumors,
or not. I mean,
but there's always rumors about something like that.
I didn't know nothing about the Great Khali, and guess what? He surprised me, and he really showed off, the first couple of weeks when, a 7-foot monster comes in and just manhandles people. But, the thing is that this is also part of that new chapter for the bloodline in general. I remember a post PLE a year ago where Paul Heyman said the bloodline is not a beginning to end story. This is a family story that goes on for generations. There's just re-sparking what was being told back when the OGs of the dynasty began, right? And you got this, so we're building this bigger and bigger. And just because Roman Reigns loses that title, that's just the end of a chapter. We're beginning a brand new saga. And think about this like a Star Wars series, for example. Roman Reigns is the Skywalker saga. Okay, but in between you have the Han Solo, you have the the Mandalorian, whatever the case may be. Just think of, they're not as good as the Skywalker.
Just not the Acolyte. Just that was bad. Anyway,
but Solo Sokoa, this 2.0, this Timu bloodline is just one of those implemented stories in between, and it keeps the story going. And that was one thing that I'm actually glad to see, because it's it you know you I want to see what's next. I want to see the build up. There's so many things you can push off from this. Is Solo Sokoa the mastermind
um,
behind this new bloodline, or could it be The Rock? Right? I mean, so there's so many things you could do with it. I like it because it presents opportunities, which you see Hunter, he's great for doing. How did you feel about Roman Reigns returning?
I like seeing it finally. I mean, everybody knew he was going to be returning at some point. There were rumors he was going to be returning at SummerSlam. There was even pictures posted. By the way, he's backstage at SummerSlam, so people did see him. Um, they didn't hide it very well, like they have done in the past when they had like surprise returns. But I think now, like,
Need
I
them to
mean,
hide it?
yeah, huh?
Did you need him to hide it though? He's
Um,
coming back.
it's like, well, him, CM Punk, when he returned, it's like you knew it, you're happy to see it, you're not surprised, but you're still surprised,
Right.
that it actually
Right.
happened. And with this now, I mean, and I do agree, yes, this does have the okay, you say you're the tribal chief. All I did was I took a break for a little bit, and now you're stepping in. This is a I'm gonna go back in history. Or actually, I'm going to go with the story of Robin Hood. This is King Richard left for a little bit. Prince John decided he was going to take over the kingdom in King Richard's absence. And King
Yeah.
Richard came back and was like, no, I'm taking my kingdom back. And
Right.
so that's what it's kind of like that. Um, I
I
mean,
mean,
and I
there's
think
still speculations for Dwayne and Roman next year WrestleMania. Just like I said, speculations.
they've been speculating that though for like
And
4
I
years
get
now.
that, but
And
you still want. I mean, okay, so Roman Reigns eventually will get a title shot back again, but does he need a title right now? There's other feuds that he could participate in, and this is a feud that he can participate in. How much would this help Solo
um,
Sikoa and his single company?
Roman, they're not going to put Roman in anything right now except
No,
for against the blood. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense.
yeah,
He came in, he kept Solo from beating Cody,
yeah.
so now he's going to be going after Solo just based on the bloodline part. Now, I think giving Solo um, probably honestly the US title because LA Knight just won it, and we'll be hitting on that match as well. But the they already have the tag titles. Now they could do
Yeah,
the Freebird rule with that one.
yeah.
Tama Tonga Loa and Jonathan Fatu or Jacob Fatu. There's a
Well,
lot of
he's
Fat.
injured, is he not? I believe they wrote him off a little
He's
bit.
injured.
Right.
Yeah, they
And he
did
was the
that.
original one who won with Tama Tonga, right? I mean,
Was he?
yeah,
Um,
because that was the case. I don't know. But so the only thing I wish I would have saw was Paul Heyman return first. I wish
yeah.
we would have saw Paul Heyman come out and say, you know, come out during the match and say, "Here's Roman Reigns," just to see him, because I mean they're the two peas in a pod here by now.
The only thing I think that's going to happen, and some people may disagree with me on this, and this last time I say it before because there's six other matches we have to get to,
Oh gosh.
but I could see Jay and Jimmy coming back with Roman going against the rest of the bloodline, including their own brother.
Yeah.
So that'd be 3-on-4. Now, who the fourth person would be, I have no clue. Yeah, I
Sami Zayn.
can't. Same as Zayn, maybe. I
Yeah,
honestly, that's actually something else I'm going to hit on a little bit later on about Sammy. But beyond that match, and I'm going to start from the very first match because this is Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley. Uh, by the way, you and I both called Cody beating Solo Sikoa, and we both called Liv Morgan beating Rhea Ripley. To retain the women's title. Now, that whole thing with Liv Morgan and Dominic, who, by the way, you take Dominic and his mustache, and you take his hair and you give it like the Brady perm for like the Brady Bunch back in the 70s. he's a porn star. I mean, he's a 1970s adult film star. But
I mean,
anyway,
Liv Morgan looks like that on the other end. No, so I mean, does
well,
that not work out?
but either way, that whole love triangle thing, honestly, I was never really buying into it. I know they were trying to push it. Um, but when Dominic helped Liv in the end, was anybody really surprised? It now I like the match.
Yeah.
I did like the match. I thought the match was excellent itself. Um, it ended how we thought it was going to end. Liv winning with shenanigans. I don't know if we both said shenanigans, but I know in another match I did say shenanigans, and I said specific shenanigans, and I was right. But 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 yeah, that one. I mean, like I said, thought it was a good match.
Okay, so here's what I would just like to say on this match and this kind of just feud between this three-way love triangle. They're testing waters, something that they haven't done in like a decade and a half. It's been ever since the PG era, right?
Right.
This is kind of, when you talk about like the new transition WWE has taken, that PG-13, right? There's been content right now. This is content. This is that storyline that it may sound corny at times, but for some of the audience, people want to watch this. And you roll over into Monday night and you see, Liv and Dom come out from the top of the stairwell from the crowd. And then you have Rhea and Judge, and Damien just battling. And now you see a mixed gender tag team match. Like, this is new stuff that you don't see often in storytelling in the WWE, especially in a while. So yes, they're treading with water, but I like it. I mean, it may not be your cup of tea of storytelling in a sense that this may not be your favorite category, right? Or subject, but this is now you have a little bit of something for everybody who's tuning into it, whether it's a mother or teenager, right? This is kind of like that teenage, drama where, your boyfriend gets taken from another girl type thing, and
yes and
in a
no,
sense,
but
I mean, it's just new.
Well, think about this though. 2 out of the 3 people involved in this recently got married for real.
Yeah.
Dominic just got married a few months ago, and then Rhea Ripley just got married a few weeks ago, and that was actually very well known. So I think that kind of took it away from it.
Right. So, but this is where you have to separate yourself from a fan who likes just the creativity of the storytelling, right? Because in reality, yeah, they're married, but in the WWE, they're not married.
Right.
So this is where you kind of just have to separate yourself as a fan. Yeah, in reality, I know they're married, they're taken, so it's kind of like, but this is still a creative.
Those kind of things, they usually don't end very well.
No, you're
unfortunately,
right.
because
proceed with caution, but
reality kind of when you spend that much time with somebody, especially when I don't know if they had them traveling together or not, because things like that happen, and next thing you know, real life steps in, and so that's why
I heard Buddy was kind of open about this too, but
I think
also wants to be involved.
He's an AEW guy, but yeah, so I'm not, like I said, I'm not necessarily a fan. Well, maybe it was just because it was like the way they kind of handled it. It was, it was like I never doubted that Dominic was now with Liv.
Right.
And not only that, but we saw the Judgment Day. I hate having the word "the" in front of it, but I think it should just be Judgment Day. I think it sounds better. But we knew they were about to have a lot of changes anyway, because Rhea had become way too popular to stay with the heel faction. And then, of course, later on, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the Damian Priest match because we already mentioned him a little bit. This was the one match I got wrong, by the way. I honestly didn't think they would have.
I think I got it wrong too.
Yeah, we both did. And there was only one other one you got wrong. We both did pretty good as far as like our match picks. I don't remember the other one. Oh, I think you had one of the women's matches. Well, the only women's match. No, the other women's match. Anyway,
I still have. No, I had Bayley win.
You had Bayley winning. I think I have to go back and look at the text that we were sending. But but either way, I mean, we both did really good with our picks. But yeah, with Gunther and Damian Priest, knew it was going to be a good match, and it was, because Gunther's going to give you a good match with all his skill, and he just looks like he just never stops coming at you. You know,
Yeah.
you keep pushing back, and he just keeps coming. He's like, like a boss in a video game. You're throwing everything at him, and he may be moving a little bit slower, but he's still moving. And of course, Damien Priest, I mean, can throw you some good power moves in there, because his finishing move, the South of Heaven chokehold,
Yeah.
or choke slam that he does. But I liked how they did this. I've never seen this done before, where, of course, they had Finn Balor pulling Gunther's leg onto the rope. Now, normally, he did it behind Damien's back, but then Damien looked up and saw it on the replay. And I'm like, oh, that's original. So he saw it right after, he saw the replay of that happening. And so now he knew for sure. And they've been teasing this for over a year, that Finn Balor and Damien, that they were going to be hitting loggerheads at some point. And it finally happened. And you saw Finn Balor's face afterwards. He kind of had the, head down, kind of giving him the death stare, showing yes, and he even said, one, yeah, so like I was saying, Finn had actually mentioned, he had said that this was been coming for a while, because he said Damien had screwed him over first, and somehow they went through all that. But either way, Damien was another one, though, we knew was going to be splitting off Judgment Day, because he was another one that had become very popular, and it was kind of hard to keep him in that, especially when he's saying, "Don't come help me." So I mean, as a wrestling fan for as long as what I've been, it's not the first time I've seen a faction split up because of different kind of
Oh, yeah.
reasons. But I just like the way they did it with the replay, and that's
Right.
when he saw it immediately that he had been, somebody had betrayed him.
So I got to ask you then, Damian Priest, and go back to Money in the Bank last year, where he wins the briefcase, cashes it in at WrestleMania, and then his title run that you could argue has kind of been a little bit iffy, right? Fair, at least maybe in a little bit of the performance wise. Now he dropped the title to Gunther, and I'm not saying that Damian won't win another title in his time frame, but for me, I guess I kind of would have hoped, and this is kind of where it's a catch-22, because I would have hoped to see Damien and Finn Balor for the title, which for me, kind of makes sense for, in an aspect of, Finn has kind of been taken away from the title for the past couple years, right? And so wouldn't it be revenge, sweet revenge, if Finn can get, ends up facing Damien and wins the title off of him, but whether he carries it on for every length of time. But then yet again, Gunther has kind of proven himself.
Yeah,
he definitely is the next guy.
Quite a few times over.
And it's just, I just look at it and I'm just like, well, it's, you couldn't necessarily lose in this situation, because if Gunther doesn't win, he still has something to fight for, right?
Right.
But then now Damien, since he lost, he still has his eyes set on the Judgment Day. But so I guess it worked out either way, but I just feel that maybe Damien may not be getting the same title opportunity again, or a title run opportunity again in the WWE, at least in the main card.
It just occurred to me why, it may be a subconscious thing, but why Paul Levesque, Triple H, why he's been pushing Gunther so hard, besides the fact that Gunther is very good. Gunther, it just now occurred to me, reminds me a lot of Killer Kowalski.
Okay.
In his appearance and his style and everything. Killer Kowalski is who trained Triple H. So,
but he also made, I mean, you think about it, and you do, when this is all said and done, look back on Gunther's career from NXT UK, that has kind of hardly been anything. He had a body transformation. He dominated NXT UK. He practically the time he did have an NXT, he ran through, and he's been dominant in the WWE. There's been nothing bad to say about Gunther. And when you talk about his in-ring ability, he is changing professional wrestling because his concept of wrestling is to make it look like he's actually fighting somebody, even though people want to call it out. Oh, it's scripted, it's fake, yada yada yada. Well, no, Gunther takes away that aspect with his hard chops and his hard kicks. Like it's like I feel sorry for whoever faces a Gunther because I know what he's getting. Like do you really know what you're getting yourself into? And this match is coming up here at the Bash of Berlin, right at the end of the month between Randy Orton and Gunther. And it reminds me a lot about the SummerSlam a few years ago between Randy and Brock, where Randy is like, do you really know what you're getting yourself into? Because I know you faced him once, but Gunther is another specimen that I proceed with caution before you mess with.
Well, because one thing, Gunther, tell me what is his finishing move?
He changes it. He has
exactly.
So many.
He can beat you in so many different ways. I mean, you want to go submission match? Well, he just beat a Damien with the submission move.
He's a pure grappler.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the proper term to say?
Yeah.
Like he's a pure fighter.
And he'll throw punches and he'll throw his chops. His chops are nasty.
Remember when Shane did the NXT Underground for the moment where he
for that minute that they were doing that? Yeah, I remember that.
It kind of reminds me like Gunther could go like hands down just pure. He reminds me of Timothy Thatcher. I don't know if I don't know who he is now in wrestling, but reminds you like when Tommaso Ciampa, when he was just like a pure just grappler, like he'd go no hold bar type stuff. But man, Gunther is another specimen. Congratulations to him. It's going to be fun watching, and it's going to be interesting to see who his opponents are. And it's like you see Bronson Reed on the other end destroying everybody in his path.
He's being pushed as a monster. I mean, and a big monster. And
you think that could be a good feud?
Him and Gunther?
Goodness. Yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, who do you book to lose?
I wish they would mix things up again. Well, Braun Strowman's on Raw. Do you think they'll ever put him in a title match again?
Honestly, I don't know what they're doing with Braun right now.
I think they proceed with cautious because he has had neck surgery.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to say injury prone because it sounds like an insult, but like you said, he's had neck surgery and he has had injuries because he's another one. He's like Randy Orton. His style is not subtle.
I would watch Gunther and Braun though. Like that would be an awesome match. I mean, and so hey, listen, Randy and Gunther first title defense, I think is perfect. And what I love so much about it is they're completing the story because this is history dated back to the King of the Queen of the Ring tournament where Randy wasn't technically pinned. So this is that story coming to a conclusion.
But the other title on Raw, Braun Breaker and Sami Zayn. It was the shortest match of the evening, and I don't want to call it a squash match, but I mean, at the same time, Braun Breaker, I mean, he did dominate the match, I mean, which we expected. And he took the IC title, which, we both called that, I believe. And, so, I mean, the match was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
It had to be.
Yeah, brutal.
No disrespect to Sami Zayn.
Right. I didn't see Sami Zayn as a long-term champion anyway. But because Sami is one people like to see chasing. But once he gets it, it's like, okay, now what? Because they like for him to be the underdog because they like cheering for him to come from underneath and finally, maybe get it. And because people can relate to an underdog. And with Braun Breaker, I mean, of course, being, Braun Breaker, I mean, he's kind of a monster. I mean, he's Rick Steiner's kid. And, so he's got a legit pedigree. And, so yeah, this was the shortest match. It was 5.5 minutes, just over 5.5 minutes long. But not a squash match. Squash matches are usually like a minute, but he did dominate the majority of the match, if you ask me.
And I think it's, let's make sure we give flowers to Sami Zayn because when he has held the title, he's done a really good job. Definitely deserved. That's why we put the title on him to begin with. Someone needed to take it off of Gunther. He was chasing something, and just for the past 2 years, he's been chasing, and he's always conquered. And for a moment there after WrestleMania, Sammy was still chasing because he had to beat Chad Gable. And you're right, there was really nothing much that he was chasing, and the opponents that he was coming across was bigger, faster, better. And I'm not saying that to devalue Sami Zayn and what he's capable of doing, but I think I don't think he's defined. His career is not defined behind a title. Never has and never will.
Right. Because everybody likes Sammy for a lot of different reasons. When Sammy finally wrestled in Saudi Arabia, everybody was cheering that, most of all the Saudi Arabian fans.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're like, okay, what's going on between the government of Saudi Arabia and somebody else? That's them. They wanted to see Sammy, and he finally showed up, and he showed out. I mean, and that roof about blew off that place when he showed up. But yes, I mean, Sammy, it was a 3.5, 4 month reign.
Yeah.
It made sense because Gunther needed to drop the title so he could jump in the world title picture, so he could become the King of the Ring, so he could get that title shot. I like, by the way, how they did that. King of the Ring, Queen of the Ring, they get automatic title shots now. I like that. Instead of just saying, "Hey, you're the King of the Ring." All right, so
it fills in that void. We talked about
the
build up to SummerSlam. It gives you something to build up towards it. The only fear I have, this is kind of also a transitional period in the WWE where we have talent that's been running WWE for the past decade. Sami Zayn's one of them, right? That now you also got new talent that's been brought up and to showcase. So you're trying to find an equal place for everybody. And so Sammy may be at the position in his career, and this is maybe why they gave him that title right now, that he's coming back to, all right, we're going to use you. You're going to still mean something to the company, but you may need to also be able to take a different direction and helping growing down below.
Right.
And I could just see that out of Sammy. Same thing, kind of Kevin. I mean, they're kind of keeping him in the picture. They're obviously giving him a title shot, for everything that he's been put through. But he's nothing in a major storyline. Yes, he's there when they need him, but he's kind of helping these younger talents. I mean, look how much Randy and Kevin has helped the newer the Team U bloodline, right? Kind of build over the last couple of months, right? I mean, that's been pretty good. So Sami Zayn in a maybe good position, but
well, next match, the other mid-card title. LA Knight finally beat Logan Paul for the United States Championship. Logan Paul, I thought did really good as a champion, especially a heel champion. Logan Paul is probably one of the most he's probably the sleeper hit of the past few years in professional wrestling, period, because this goofy YouTube star is not supposed to be as good of a wrestler as what he is, but you can tell he put in the work. So yeah, he made him holding the title was not any title. Well, okay, holding the world title be a stretch. Him holding the US title was not a stretch.
No.
And I thought he did good, and I thought this match was good. I mean, the match ended, of course, the brass knuckles. I mean, we knew that somebody's going to bring brass knuckles. Machine Gun Kelly, being involved, I thought that was kind of strange, to be honest with you, because he didn't really do too much. I mean, he was just kind of there. Here, have some brass knuckles, but
could have probably got better work out of Jelly Roll than.
Yeah. By the way, that was such a opposite. Machine Gun Kelly, who could hula hoop through a Cheerio. He had Jelly Roll come out. Jelly Roll is huge. I didn't realize how big that man was until he got in the ring.
Isn't MGK in the WWE 2K25?
I don't know. I haven't played it. Well,
I believe that maybe,
and
if so, that
might
may
be
a reason why he
isn't it. Isn't he from Cleveland? Actually,
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, I don't know. You always get celebrities involved. I mean, what's his name was involved a couple weeks on SmackDown.
He's born in Houston, origin Cleveland. So yeah. Cleveland's got a little bit more of a musical history than what people realize. That's the reason why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there. But I was glad to see LA Knight finally win. Now, what they do with LA Knight, because I think he's another one that people have got behind him so much over the past year. I think he was another one that became the surprise favorite of the fans. And excuse me, I'm sorry for coughing. I don't have the silence button like you do. I need to give me one of those. But with LA Knight, I mean, because he has become, one of the fans' biggest favorites over the past year or so. For him to finally win this title, do they stop him here? Because they're not going to throw him into the mix for the undisputed Universal World WWE, whatever, how many titles that, they give this, however many titles they give the title. I don't think they're going to throw him right in that mix just yet because of all the stuff with, the bloodline. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about the match itself?
You know, LA Knight is just proving to everybody that age is just a number. Right? I mean, he's what, in his solid 40s?
LA Knight? I'll look at
Yeah.
it right now.
Like,
Yeah,
and
well,
he's just
40,
proving,
he was 41.
but still, and he's
Yeah.
looking like he's 28 years old.
Yeah, you wouldn't have, if you'd have told me, like, if I met him right there, if you would have said, "Oh, he's 41 years old," I would have said, "No, there's no way." I would have said maybe early 30s at best because he looks great.
Right. Like I applaud what he's doing, and you know what? I hope. One of the frustrations that I have is that a lot of times when you chase and you finally win, it's kind of like, all right, what's next?
Right.
Sami Zayn, for example, he chased and he won. What's next? You kind of struggled with trying to find the next thing to keep you relevant. And for LA Knight, yeah, he was getting the name because he was getting the hype behind him because he was chasing. So he finally won it. So how can they maintain his popularity and keep him thriving as a US champion? Logan Paul was already a celebrity before he came into the WWE, and he was already a celebrity before he won the United States Championship. So he didn't need to carry around or maintain anything. Matter of fact, he took that across the world, or at least with him wherever he went, and bragged about being US champion. And then every few months when he had to show up and participate, he did, and he exceeded with an A+. So
right.
That's the only, I hate to be the person looking on the bad side of things, in this, but that's unfortunately my concern. But it's well deserved. He deserves that US title. He deserves to be crowned. He deserves to be recognized as champion. And I just hope, like I said, that he has a good run, because it's time. Not saying Logan Paul did a bad job, but it's time that US championship gets recognized in the WWE and builds integrity.
Again.
Yes, because that's one thing that, with the bloodline being the main focus point on SmackDown and Logan's Paul's schedule, you could kind of, you didn't need as much attention. But now, since everything's falling into place, this is the Paul Levesque era, the IC titles are getting plenty of attention on Raw. It's time for the US title to get enough attention on SmackDown. I don't want to see the last of Logan Paul, though. I
No.
hope he's not done yet.
And
that's rare to say, to be honest, because most celebrities that come in are part-timers. I say, get out of here.
Right.
But Logan Paul, I would actually like to see come back.
Logan Paul is one of those celebrities that come in, and now the wrestlers don't seem to mind him being there, because there's always been kind of a source of contention between the wrestlers. I mean, just look at WrestleMania 1 with Mr. T and Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper absolutely hated Mr. T being involved in that, and it wasn't necessarily because Mr. T's being, because they were having to job to it, because they're having to lose to him. He said, "We do this every day. This is our livelihood." And yet somebody who's never done this before comes in and beats us. That was like a couple of years ago. Remember Sami Zayn jobbed out to Johnny Knoxville at WrestleMania. I hated that.
Big
You
Show
know,
jobbed out to Mayweather.
yeah. I mean, granted, that was a boxing match, but still,
Still,
um, I mean, I hated seeing things like that. But with, Bad Bunny was the first one that came in. It's like, oh, Bad Bunny, okay, some rapper dude. All right, comes in. Whoa, wait a minute. He actually looks like he knows
and
what
that's the
he's
funny part.
doing. And
Logan Paul and Bad Bunny came in same time a little bit,
roughly, yeah, roughly.
and I had more hopes for Bad Bunny as a wrestler than Logan Paul at the beginning. Logan Paul proved me wrong,
Hmm.
over the years. So tip my hat off to him. But hopefully, it has to be the right feud. But hopefully, he does have another match
Yeah.
in the WWE.
And because they didn't make it all about them. They both respect, especially Logan Paul. I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from Bad Bunny, but they both respected the business too much to make it just about them.
Yeah.
Now, Logan Paul is a he could actually go right now as one of the best heels in the company, period. And that's
Yeah.
because of, his promos. I mean, where he's slamming everybody. Of course, the thing is, one of the things about making a good heel promo is when you start telling the truth, about something. And it's
How
not
much has he learned from the Miz? Let's take us back to
oh,
that
I bet the Miz has probably taught him quite a bit.
because I remember the Miz was notorious for going around town to town and bashing everybody in every town
Right.
for some time.
Well,
So
and the Miz also started out as a celebrity ish, not as big as Logan
yeah,
Paul, but he was a celebrity before he became a wrestler. And a lot of people didn't like the way he came in. But I mean, to me, that, by the way, that's a bunch of BS. It does not matter how somebody got their start. If they're doing good in the ring, if they respect what's going on in the ring, if they are putting the work in, why does it matter how they came in? You know,
right.
you got to respect the talent. And I mean, you can't say, well, I paid my dues, they didn't. Well, maybe they did pay their dues just in a different way from you.
Well, the Miz paid his dues then some. So
Yes, and he definitely has. And um but yeah, so
hey, talk about that. What about the interaction with our awesome Truth Jelly Roll and A Town
that's
Down
that's
Under?
when Jelly Roll came in.
Yeah,
I was like, man, that dude.
chair
Now
shot too. Like
I'll tell you what,
gosh,
I like me some Jelly Roll.
oh
The
man,
first time I heard the song "Dead Man Walking," and I was actually talking to somebody about this not too long ago. Um, "Dead Man Walking." The first time I heard that song was actually on Sirius XM on Octane. And
yeah,
Jelly Roll is known as a country but hip hop.
the hip hop, yeah,
Yeah, and his hip hop. I listened to his hip hop. Some of it. I'm
like a
like,
twang a little bit.
I mean, I'm like his hip hop to me. I mean, and I'm not the best judge of hip hop. Don't get me wrong, but his hip hop to me was just kind of okay. There was nothing about it that really made it stand out from other hip hop, except for he's this great big fat white dude. But there's some other great big fat white dudes who are not doing hip hop. So there's really not. There was nothing that made it stand out. But that song "Dead Man Walking," I was like,
Yeah,
okay, what is this? And by the way, I hear a little bit of a twang guitar. And then I heard the song Son of a Sinner, which is a
yeah,
straight out country kind of a
oh yeah.
blues song. And then you listen to his other songs, he still has a hip hop element in there, but it's
Well,
not the entire song.
that's how
Yeah.
country's kind of turning into.
Yeah.
Country's doing country with a little bit of hip hop version of it. I mean, the
Um,
new
by the
artist these days.
by the
Anyways,
way, who was given the credit or the blame, however you want to look at it, as far as like starting this whole country pop thing where country music has become more pop?
I wanted to go. So I was told, I thought Sam Hunt was one of the guys. I've been told by my wife that Hunter, Hunter Hayes. Um,
Give you a hint. I just literally did a podcast about this person about an hour before you and I started
no, well,
recording.
I
And I
haven't heard
did
about it.
the Cubicle Chat podcast. I did it all about Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
All the haters. Yeah, she's actually been catching the blame, I guess, is what
But
they were
it's
saying.
not a bad blame. I mean, I've seen, and then I know this should be a music podcast, but yeah, I love to see the collaboration and the mix between different genres of music. And
Hmm.
I'm sorry, but if you could throw a little bit of rap in the country and back when Nelly was doing country songs with
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it just all depends.
Keeps You
But
Thriving. Anyways,
yeah, so yeah, the awesome
oh
truth coming out there. By the way, our truth getting beat up this past Monday. That was
man,
horrible. How you gonna beat up our truth? The man's a national treasure.
can he get beat up? Like,
I don't know. I mean, our truth.
He's still in his
he's like a
30s, I
motherfucking,
guess.
he's in his dude, he's older than I am.
I
He's
thought
in
he's in
his
his
50s.
50s. He
He's
looks
in
like
his
he's in his,
50s.
but he looks so young, man.
Yeah.
And he
and
can
he
perform.
acts so young. I mean, R-Truth is still amazing. Former NWA champion. If I ever meet him, which I want him to sign that belt right there.
Yeah, there you go.
And so because that's the belt he
Um,
held. But yeah,
I want to continue, but I just gotta give a shout out. I don't know if you watched it yet, but when you think of Jelly Roll recently, just like Luke Combs, you got to think of the new movie Twister that just came out.
I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's good. I've heard it's really good.
It's really good. And man, gosh, I was optimistic because the original movie was good, but I just, I just didn't like it all the way. So this one really invested,
Yeah, 29
sold
years later,
yeah.
that's so. And the first movie actually had Van Halen on the soundtrack.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but yeah, next match, and this was I think was the only one you got wrong, or the other besides, you were 5-2. I think that's a pretty good record.
Right,
You
but I
know,
thought you said that Bailey was going to win also.
no, I said Dijax.
You said Nia Jax.
Yep.
It sucks because, listen, Bailey, I think deserves more. But at the same time, Nia Jax definitely deserves it. And I think you still got to you have to push the women's division. And this has kind of been the topic the entire podcast so far. This is just creating new opportunities. Bailey was someone from 2014, 10 years ago, and she finally got her break. Was the timeline a bit too late?
Well, she was women's champion before when she was Hugger Bailey.
Yeah, but I don't
Because
think people remember that, to be honest.
they do, but not necessarily fondly. They remember her being good, but she was still like the golly gee whiz shucks kind of Bailey at the time. She had the Bailey buddies who she finally destroyed with a pickaxe and said those. So they're not bringing those back. I mean, they'd
Yeah.
have to find the remnants of them and tape them up. And so she's not doing that anymore. I don't know, honestly. I think Bailey, the character, is kind of at a crossroads right now because Damage Control, the faction she formed, kicked her out. Now she just lost the title. What does she do?
Do you
I
go
mean,
back and try to take out Damage Control, which is now Roman trying to take out the Bloodline Team which was the Sami Zayn last year so you've seen the repetitiveness of, I wouldn't go down that route. So you're right. She isn't in the crossroad.
yeah.
So that's why then you ask, why did you drop the title?
It's not her decision. If
I
they
know it's
wanted
not
her,
her
yeah.
decision, but I asked the WWE creative team then, why did you drop the title if you have nothing planned for her?
Well, because they
And maybe
have
they do.
plans. They have plans for Nia, and Bailey might be taking a break for a little bit and may come back with a brand new character. You never know. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Somebody they go and honestly, sometimes it's hey, go give your body a rest. Because I mean, wrestling's a tough business, and I'm actually glad now that they do
Yeah.
give the performers an opportunity at times to go rest up those nagging injuries. I mean, take a month off,
But
two
here's the
months off.
frustrating problem because, I've expressed this before. I've heard this a long time ago. It takes 3 months to know if a superstar talent is going to work out or not. About 3 months.
Right, I can see that.
Okay. So it took Bailey how long to build her way to get to the Royal Rumble to win it, then to win her match at WrestleMania. It took her a year and a half.
After she came back from being injured.
Exactly.
Like a legitimate injury.
Well, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So, but you build up a year and a half. And I appreciate that because I don't like it when somebody comes back and then wins the title 2 minutes later and then there you go. But the problem is that now that title run is short lived and you dropped it and now you got to go rest up again. So all of that work that you just got done putting in for the year and a half, that reward is only granted for 4 or 5 months. Who did she really even compete much against in that time frame that's worth mentioning in that title run? And if she leaves for, let's say, even 2 weeks, she's kind of considered right back down at the bottom of the totem pole for when she comes back. She's going to either have to come back for a purpose or come back to and start from the bottom again.
Well, here's actually a problem, and it's actually a good problem to have for WWE. They took a long time to get to this point. The women's division on both shows is very, very crowded. They have not had this issue in a very long time. Because think about this. On SmackDown, Nia Jax is the champion. Well, they've already been building Jade Cargill, and they already have Bianca Belair. And plus, of course, they have all the women from Damage Control. Where is Naomi? Which show is she on?
She's on SmackDown. She's just
on SmackDown.
Turned back and aided because Blair Davenport came out and attacked.
Right.
And Naomi was the third person to come in and defend.
And Tiffany Stratton is also there with the Money in the Bank contract.
Exactly.
Now, she could jump to Raw at any time and challenge that one. They did that with Big E. Remember, he was on SmackDown. He had the briefcase, and all of a sudden he jumped to Raw and challenged for the title. Don't remember who, but he ended up winning.
Now that feud's been boiling between Nia and Tiffany. So as that friendship has been building.
Yeah, the friendship, but you're waiting for Tiffany to pull the trigger and stab Nia in the back. But Nia is another one of those. Nia is not very sympathetic. It's hard to have sympathy for somebody, a wrestler anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm quite sure, the person, behind the wrestler is actually a very nice person. But you see somebody, and she's a monster in the ring. She's wrestling like what Yokozuna is. She's pulling Yokozuna's moves.
Yeah.
And if Tiffany turns on her, well, people are going to cheer Tiffany. Because I think people are already cheering her anyway because she's good. She is very,
Oh, yeah. So then let's, and I know we got to move on, but I want to just bring this up. Nia Jax is big. I know she could carry herself in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have to do much to damage her opponent, which is great because you don't see a lot of those wrestlers. But now it takes away from someone like Tiffany, who kind of needs to have these move sets in order to, that goes along with her persona in the ring. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's kind of that trying to make sure you pair up, and now it's up to, whoever facing whoever to really get together and say, all right, we don't need to get every single move set in the books in the match.
You don't have to do every single one of your moves or the way Jim Cornette used to put it, get all your stuff in every single match. Leave something.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, I think the women's division in both shows is very interesting right now. Last match we have not discussed yet, and it's the only match that was there that did not have any kind of title attached to it. And this was one that I actually made the call. I called the right winner, and I had the the bonus points because I said it's going to be Drew McIntyre over CM Punk with shenanigans involving Seth Rollins. And I was right. Now, it wasn't intentional shenanigans, but it was still some shenanigans, involving Seth Rollins being the special referee. So
this is such clever coming from the WWE. And this is what you have to like about it. I remember talking about to you 2 weeks ago saying that the WWE for years were focusing one PLE at a time. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was true. So now, though, you have it where you're kind of now formulating stories that you could pin it, come back to it, pin it, come back to it. We talked, what's so great about this match was that you had a feud between Punk and Drew for the past 8 months. That was
without a match. Without a match. That's the wild thing. Without a match.
It really got heated up. Like, it was really impressive. And then you throw in Seth Rollins. And I'm like, first of all, I'm thinking to myself, why is Seth Rollins back? Why is he involved? But then I remember, right? So you're okay. First of all, you got Punk and Drew in the complete circle for the last 8 months, right? Which is what we need. And that feud's not even done because I think we're expected to see them again. Part 2. But then let's not forget about a year ago, Seth Rollins did not like when Punk returned at Survivor Series. And that's been kind of been in the
Oh
shadows
my God,
for
it
the
has
last
been that
year,
long, haven't it?
almost a year, right? Coming up.
Yep.
So now, if you look at this, what is WWE doing? They have just kind of re-sparked the interest because they just took out Rollins again, right? Because Bronson Reed, so that you could let Drew and Punk now finish the story, but you reminded everybody that Seth Rollins has a beef with Punk. So we will still be seeing that match at some point, but let's continue with Drew and Punk. You know what I'm saying? Just look at all the story. Like, if you draw that Venn diagram and you put Punk in the middle and Drew on one side and Rollins on the other side, like it WWE is kind of now making sense, right? And they're completing their storylines just like how they have not forgotten about Randy Orton and Gunther,
Right.
right? Um, I mean, just like they did not forget about Rhea and Liv and how they connected those pieces together. Liv hurt Rhea. Rhea hurt Liv. Liv came back and hurt Rhea, took everything from her and beat her at SummerSlam. That's still in there. So if they wanted to separate them two for a while, they can. And guess what? They can reunite that whenever they want.
Right.
You know, and and you're just gonna continue building it. So I think this match here, as much as it is great not to see a non-title match and how much it got over, to see Seth Rollins, it reminds you there's just a lot of pieces in this that really showcases the direction that the WWE is in and where that they also are recognizing what feuds have worked in the past.
Right. Because the long-term storytelling, I mean, that is such as something, and I know that the territory days were before your time, but I mean, I still remember this time because Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair, they had a feud that lasted for years. Okay. My favorite wrestler at the time, Jimmy the Boogie Woogie Man Valiant, he had a feud with Paul Jones. And actually, the Boogie Woogie Man himself told me before I got banned, but he told me that it lasted for 5 years. And it was, I mean, now it wasn't a continuous, it was they feud, go feud with other people, come back, other people come back because there was always that underlying tension between them two. And it just worked because people wanted to see that. Rock and Express, Midnight Express, they had a feud in the Mid South area. And then Midnight Express went to Texas. Rock and Roll Express came to the Carolinas. Midnight Express ended up coming to the Carolinas. They continued the feud there. So I mean, things like that, that long term stories that you can, because people, and it's not like John Cena and Randy Orton. The last time they had a match together, Royal Rumble in 2014, people booed it because they're like, okay, we've seen this way too much. Okay, because it wasn't a long term story. It was like their 14th pay per view match against each other,
Yeah.
something like that. So that one had been done to death for no reason, right? Um, but right now, like I said, with this thing going on with Punk and Drew, one match. They've had one match, and it's been brewing up till now. Not granted because Punk got hurt, but I mean, but they
But they
had,
use that.
but they used it. And in fact, it makes you wonder if it would have lasted this long without Punk getting hurt. But they said, you know what, you can't
Don't
build
push it.
something. Yeah, you can't build on something that you don't have. You don't have a healthy Punk. Build on something you do have. A
You
Punk
know,
that's injured. Let's work with
so
that.
the WWE, I think, was notorious. They were always afraid of, all right, there's no tomorrow, so let's get it done now. But you know what? They've opened themselves up now to where, you know what, you're right. There may not be a tomorrow, but we're gonna make the most of it. And if it comes through, it comes through. And if it doesn't, it's okay. It's like, you talk about you look everywhere on Raw and SmackDown, and you just have something that you want to tune in for, and it's been interesting because I told you this a couple weeks ago. I don't know how long it has been since I was invested to watch WWE from post WrestleMania to SummerSlam. And that buildup was the entire duration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what the buildup is for Survivor Series, right? We may see the Bloodline War Games Part 2. Very well. We could. I don't know. I mean,
I'll tell you what I don't want to see. I don't want to see Raw versus SmackDown.
I
That to
don't,
me makes zero
they're too
sense.
far apart from each
Yeah.
other.
Well,
And
not
that's
only that,
fine.
but I mean, you have people who are feuding, and all of a sudden they're all going to come together just for this one night. To me, it makes zero sense, and then go back. No, I just, you
I mean, I'm just excited because it makes me happy because there's a little bit of everything for everybody.
right.
Whether it's the bloodline and you've been only watching the bloodline and what Roman Reigns has done over the last 4 years, whether you are loving the American Nightmare and Cody Rhodes, whether you're liking, the love triangle with Rhea and Liv and Dominic, whether you love, the CM Punk and Seth Rollins, and you know, this is where okay, I know I'm in good hands. I get upset when I don't watch Raw or SmackDown now. And
Right.
I haven't felt
And
this way in such a long time.
now, granted, it's hard for me to actually watch Raw every week, and it's not because I don't want to watch it. It's because I usually don't get home till close to 9 o'clock every Monday, and so by
Let
that
me put it
point, it's
this way.
already yeah.
I DVR it. This was the first time on SummerSlam I did not watch live. If I don't watch it live, I normally do not watch it. I usually just see the highlights, right?
Uh,
Because I just don't want to sit around through it. But this was the first time in years where I took a pay per view outside the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, and I sat down and watched it live after it went live, or I sat down and watched it after it went live.
I will say one thing, nice thing about watching it after the fact, and as long as you don't have any spoilers. I only had one thing slightly spoiled for me. It was an accident. Somebody texted me something, but
Fast forward.
you don't well, you don't have all the. You can
Yeah.
fast forward. I generally don't, but you don't have. Okay, we're going to show you what all the buildup was. So there's like 10, 15 minutes of videos that you don't have to watch.
Or
They
ad because you
they
don't have the premium.
right. I mean, so you don't. Um, you
So
know,
yeah.
that's the one nice
Anyways,
thing.
something I wish was on WrestleMania. Are you okay? We briefly talk about it.
Yeah,
Was I know it came in a complete circle that Monday night was the Wyatt Six and its
yeah.
debut. I will tell you that for honorary and what they're trying to do, it brought me to tears. Okay, just because I love Bray Wyatt. He replaced the Undertaker for me, and there's so much appreciation that you just didn't appreciate as much until he left. He was gone. But what I loved the most about it was that they actually wrestled.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't take this entity and say, we're going to be dominant and we're just going to annihilate you. It was an actual wrestling match. Everyone competed. And it almost, looked for a brief moment that the American, whatever team name they have now, could have
Yeah, I
actually
was
won.
kind of confused on that the other night. I was like, what?
Anyway, so um American made, I guess.
American made, and then the
Yeah.
Alpha Academy, the way they had it
Yeah.
spelled.
So, but no, like they look immortal, but they're not immortal. They
Right.
could compete. Now, I don't know where that's going to give you, and I'm always skeptic about that, especially because you can't just build them up as a dominant being all the time. But I definitely give a lot of my cap off. Now, listen, now I know they're going to proceed with caution. Don't
Yeah.
expect them to rush into another match, and I don't need them to rush into another match. They're not into anything serious, and you pick and choose your battles. This isn't something that they have to be each and every week, or they're here to tell a story about Bray Wyatt and what his envision was.
Well, I'm also glad to see Eric Rowan back
Oh yes,
because the last time that he was in the company and they had him do that
the
ridiculous
Bludgeon
thing.
Brothers.
Well, I didn't like the name, but I did like the team.
I
But
love the
no,
Bludgeon.
I like yeah, I like the team. I didn't I thought the name was
Yeah.
kind of hokey, but that was a Vince McMahon name. You could tell that. But Eric Rowan, this was after Luke Harper, of course, John Huber,
Yeah.
another
Oh,
one
did
made.
he team up with Daniel Bryan and did the?
They did something, but he also, remember, he was carrying around this little,
Oh, the birdcage box.
yeah,
Yeah.
the thing, and then it finally turns out it was a robot spider. And
That
it was
Vince
like,
McMahon for you.
what in the crap was that? And then he left the company. I think he was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Now he was coming out, he was repping um a lot of metal bands on his t-shirts. A lot of bands that most people, unless you're metalheads, you probably wouldn't have heard of them. I'm like, and I don't remember some of them now who he was repping them, but I remember watching it going, yeah, there we go.
I did
But
wish then Braun Strowman would have come back and been a part of the
yeah,
Wyatts. So,
and for he's actually, I guess, he turned it down,
yeah.
you know, and
Fair,
maybe
fair enough.
maybe because of the injuries, but he's like, I mean, this guy's kind of, kayfabe. He's like, it is kind of freaky, but maybe there's reasons why he didn't, you
Well, you
know,
think about it, you got too much, there's a lot of pressure on these men, right?
yeah,
There's a lot of pressure, plus sentimental values. I really want to see Bo Dallas
yeah.
compete. I mean, I think that will be the icing on the cake for me.
That
Be
was one of the
Bo
things
Dallas.
I never understood why Vince McMahon would not acknowledge on TV that Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas were brothers. To me, it didn't make any sense. But then again, he never acknowledged on TV that Randy Savage and Lanny Poffo were brothers either.
Yeah.
Now Jake Roberts and Sam Houston being brothers, most people didn't even know that. I didn't know that until, like 10 years ago, that they were actually brothers. And along with Rock and Robin was their sister. But I am going to move on from there because we have one other thing we need to talk about, and that is this coming Saturday at Thomas More Stadium, also known as the Florence Y'all Stadium. We are going to have the Northern Wrestling Federation biggest event of the year,
Let's just
Summer
point something out.
Summer Sizzler. What's that?
Let's just point this out. NWF has stadium PLEs. This is what I call PLE.
Yeah.
Summer Sizzler PLE. And yet they're not as big as AEW. And AEW has yet to really had like an in-country stadium performance.
And this is it is an outdoor show in a baseball stadium. It's a small baseball stadium, but it is still a baseball stadium for the Florence Y'alls. It's the minor league team out of Florence, Kentucky.
And independent is it's an independent team that has nothing to do with Major League Baseball whatsoever, not associated to a double A, single A, class A, high
I mean,
school.
they still get scouted by,
They get scouted, of
yeah,
course.
especially the
But
Reds. Who, by the way, the Reds won a while ago. I don't know if you saw that or not.
they swept the Cardinals this
They did
week.
sweep the Cardinals.
Wow.
That's a
But
good idea. That's a good deal.
but no, and then also home to the Thomas More College
Yeah,
baseball team. And man, it is big. I think the weather's supposed to be nice.
yeah. I actually looked a
Mid
while
80s.
ago. I don't have Florence on my weather thing, but I do have Great American
It's in
Ballpark.
Burlingame, past that. Yeah, that's
Yes, I mean it's like right across from Great American Ballpark. Um, so yeah, I expect the weather to be nice. It's supposed to rain Friday night, but it should be clear by Saturday. I'm actually, and I say I mean the podcast is actually one of the sponsors
I
uh,
saw that. You guys
for
posted
the
that
show.
earlier this week.
Yep, it was posted. Actually, it was the Northern Wrestling Federation themselves actually posted, and they tagged everybody who's a sponsor. Us, the Dad World Order, by the way, are also sponsoring.
I saw
Uh,
that
but
GWO.
yep, those guys are great, by the way. Because I was actually asked because uh, I had already signed to be a sponsor, and I actually had somebody ask me. They're like, "Hey, the guys from DWO also want to sponsor,
Yeah.
and do you mind?" And I'm like, because they didn't want to have like same businesses, because I actually did try to have my wife's travel agent because she was a sponsor for the Women's Revolution a few years ago, and they said they were not going to have businesses that were competing. But I
Are you
actually
sponsoring any matches? Like, is that
no. Now
entailed?
that was a little bit because you actually had to pay more for that, and that was like I was barely able to afford the sponsorship
See,
just
I
enough.
understand that if you had there are tiers of
Hmm.
sponsorships. You should not never have two of the same categories of field. Like, shouldn't have two podcasts.
Well, that was actually when
Sponsor a paid match. It should be one. If you could have, if you let's say you have three type of tiers of sponsorships, right? Whether one's just, one's a paid match, you're sponsoring a match, you're sponsoring the show with a booth, let's just say, and then you have an option to sponsor the match. You should have one in each category
Well,
at
and that
least
was
available.
well, that was one of the things when I was asked, they wanted to make sure I was okay with it. I'm like, oh, absolutely. Because here's the thing about podcasting, and you know this, especially independent podcasters. We all support each other because listening to one podcast doesn't mean you can't listen to
Oh,
the
yeah.
other. But it's not like a travel agent where you're not going to use two different travel agents.
Right.
You're not going to go to two different places, two different mechanics to fix your car. You're not going to have two different plumbers. You're not going to have two different other businesses. But
But
with
you know what?
podcasting, yeah, I mean,
You get a chance to see what else is out there. When I go buy a car, I'm not just going to Nissan. I'm
right.
going to Toyota. I'm going to Honda. I'm going to Ford. So it's good to see the option. And guess what? When I go to Nissan, Toyota's right across the street.
Right.
So
And
it's good to see and compare different and I'm sure your wife with travel agency, she looks into other companies that does the same thing and see what they do to get more clients and vice versa. You learn off of each other. I think it's a building thing.
sort of,
But
but when you're talking about sponsorship, though, that's what I'm saying. The podcasting world is so different
yeah,
from everything else. Because we don't compete with other podcasts. I mean, we don't. I mean, obviously, we don't compete with each other. We don't compete with Eric and Mike and Wrestling T-shirt guy from the Dad World Order.
you encourage them.
We
I
encourage
want you
them.
to do good. I want
They've helped
DWO.
us. I mean,
Yeah.
because I mean, I text those guys, I message them, hey, because they had Al Snow in their program. I'm like, hey, man, that's a good get.
Yeah.
I was very happy for them, and they've been supportive of this show when I've had Larry Zabisco, when I've had Buff Bagwell.
I
When I've
still
had
argue to say that our podcast nation, community wise, we need to get something set up for NWF
they have, and I'll let you talk with you about that one
because
offline.
we
I've
need
actually
we need live coverage right then and there. I'm sorry. I mean, I sign me up, but like we need to have weekly, consistent live coverage at these locations because NWF it's growing.
if you'd asked me who are the top independent companies in the country, obviously OVW, because of the exposure they've gotten, because of the Netflix thing, they're probably the biggest. They used to be a development territory for
NWA.
WWE. NWA is kind of a stretch calling them an indie company anymore because they're starting to bring a lot of indie companies under their umbrella.
Impact.
But Impact, yeah, they're too big to be independent. Impact, I mean,
NWF is the longest. I mean, they've been what
NWF is
25 years,
30.
30 years.
30 years. But NWF, I mean, is probably the best run because if you talk to anybody, who's been in the independent scene and they'll talk the difference between the wrestlers who come out of the NWF and the wrestlers come out of other places. And the wrestlers, when they come from the NWF and they go wrestle for other companies, even if it's just a one shot, because there's also within the Cincinnati area, there's Spot Monkey Promotions. They also do shows. Well,
OVW is like an hour south. I mean,
it's
like
in Louisville. Yeah, it's in
yeah,
Louisville. So, but some of the NWF guys go and wrestle. I say guys, gals, and girls go and wrestle for OVW
yeah.
on occasion. In
Well,
fact,
we're gonna
every week, I mean, you have like Star Rider, you have Riley Matthews,
Riley, Big Mama.
Big Mama. Well, I don't think she does OVW, but she's doing stuff for
No,
NWA. You have I think Joshua. He's done stuff for OVW.
AJ,
AJ, yeah, AJ Vest. He's done stuff for
Lord
OVW.
Crew.
His
Well, he's
crew.
coming in to.
Well,
He comes and goes, but
veteran Jack Vaughn. He
yeah,
does stuff for OVW all the time. Now he
yeah.
doesn't do a lot for NWF recently anymore because he's actually been so busy with other bookings. But NWF, I mean, they have such a great reputation. That's why I'm glad to see them growing even more.
What I
But
love to see is them coming back, and you look at the alumni too. Which is big. Didn't you get a chance to interview any?
not this time. I
Not
was,
this time.
unless it happens tomorrow night,
No.
because I was going to last week, and
Yeah.
there's been some miscommunications here and there. But last week Roger actually asked me, hey, can you get anybody in? I was like, yes, absolutely, send them my way. and then I got sick.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't able to, I mean, I was not able to contact anybody. And I actually texted Big Mama, Roger's wife, and I was like, hey, I am so sorry about that. I said, I got sick. And I said, I either had a flu or could have been COVID. I said, my voice, though, was gone. By the way, you should have heard me. I had a job interview last Friday and it was on video. Well, I was on video. They were, just audio only, but it was through like Microsoft Team, a panel interview. I had never done a panel interview before. There was
That's
three of
just
them
like,
plus the recruiter. My voice was cracking. I was called. I actually apologized to him a few times, but
not a fan of that, to be honest, but that's
all the
just me.
panel interviews. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never did. It's a company out of Cincinnati, but I had never done that before. But my voice kept cracking. I mean, I was sucking these things down, just to keep my voice going. The recruiter, though, he was on the interview as well, and he actually told me afterwards. He said you actually did great because the questions they were asking me, they were, you know, um, sorry, I'm going to be boring some people, but there was a lot of Microsoft Excel questions. They were talking about pivot tables, slicers. They were talking about, building
Yeah.
macros. They were talking about data validation. They were talking about, VLOOKUPs, X lookups. I've never actually used an X lookup because I've never had the opportunity to use it. It's a fairly new thing. I'd like to use it. No, now I've seen it, I'm like, ooh, that looks like it'd be fun. That's an Excel nerd for you talking. But I did that whole interview, my voice cracking. That was the most I had talked that entire week after my voice started. Because I've been sucking down cough drops. I've been, I had cough medicine. I've got right here. I'll be taking that a little
Right.
later. I'm still kind of. My wife's actually sicker than I am right now. I had this, but that's why I actually could not interview. I would not have been able to interview anybody. Now,
But man,
but when I
so
texted her Monday, we were trying to arrange something with somebody, and I did send somebody a message. Not going to say who. I did send a wrestler a message, and it's somebody I've never had on the show before, and that person has never responded. And so I'm like, that part does get frustrating, but I'm not
yeah.
going to call anybody out because guess what? These wrestlers that are also human, they have lives outside of this. And so sometimes if we can't make it happen, it's unfortunate. But I do feel fortunate. A lot of the wrestlers, especially from the NWF, that I've actually had on the show, because I've actually created a pretty good rapport and pretty good relationship with the company as a whole, and
Um,
especially with a lot of the wrestlers. And so I don't get mad about, hey, I
and
can't.
NWF is very open too.
Mhm.
I don't like they're, when they're busy, they're busy. I get you. I get that. But they, from, you could, after one of these events, most of the time, you can, I don't know if the things have changed since then, you can stick around until they're done. Until they're
Um,
kicking people out. Like,
I've actually seen them kick people out. They're like, hey,
yeah,
if you're not a wrestler, leave.
right.
They've had a little bit every once in a while. Usually I go when they say that. Every once in a while, if I am setting up an interview, they've kind of let me kind of stick around a little bit longer, but not. I'm not
But
going to
there's
push
been
it.
promotions out there that are kind of seclusive to themselves and they're very strict about the process that they handle things in.
Right.
And as long as you let them handle their business, they're fairly friendly to everyone.
Um,
I don't see a whole lot of encounters, but man, this match card I think is
I'm looking
pretty
at it right
impressive.
now because I'm gonna
Um,
go from bottom to top actually. We actually mentioned a couple of Riley Matthews and AJ Vest versus Kobe Kane and Ella. Um, that's going to be mixed tag team match. Now I don't know if they're going to. Well, it says mixed tag, so I don't think it's an intergender tag. Where a lot of times, if the female tags in, one team, that means the female has to come in on the other team, and vice versa. If the male tags in, that means the male has to come on the other one. I don't know if they're going to do that, or they're just going to say, you know what, go. Um, but
do you think is it the thing is to see these four competitors, they could go against anybody though. So
yeah,
like it's not like where you have to stay gender oriented in this match. If you do get a Riley versus Colby, they could go. And I've seen that happen. Like AJ can handle himself with
mm-hmm.
Ella as well. So that will be intriguing to view. But that I think if they allow them to go, that will make this match so much more interesting.
And plus, it's Kobe Kane recently turned.
Right.
Very recently, like within like the past couple months, when Ella returned. Ella had
Right.
taken a hiatus for a little bit, so she was gone a good year and a half, something like that. But now she's returned, and and now I don't know what kind of freaky stuff they have going on in their house, but I don't know if you've
Exciting
seen.
though. fun.
Yeah.
Saturday time. I mean, God,
Dakota Wolf versus Andrew Reed, chain match. When's the last
yeah.
time you saw a chain match? Chain matches can get pretty nasty.
If they use it properly, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta watch somebody whip someone else with a chain.
Um, NWF Women's Revolution Championship champion, Big Mama, defending against the challenger, Savannah Sweet. That's going to be a good match.
That's
That's
been a
going to be
good feud actually for a little while. So, hey, quick question back on the last one.
yeah.
Is this the chain that is being brought to the ring from Dakota Wolf in recent times? Or
Well, I mean, he's been bringing chains when he and oh my God, his former tag team partner, the Strays, they were always bringing chains.
now is this kind of similar to like the bull rope match where two opponents get tied to the bull rope?
You know what? Usually chain matches, it says chain, so they're attached by the wrist. A dog collar
Okay.
match, it's attached. It's a
Right,
chain,
but
but
I've
it's
seen
attached.
the like Cody Rhodes has the bull rope match where they both get tied with the bull rope,
Yeah,
the
with the
long
cowbell in
rope.
the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now chain match, this one I'm going to say it's you have to drag your opponent to all four corners. That's usually a chain match. That's part of it. Chain matches, strap matches, same thing. Dog collar match, bull rope
Trap
match.
match, right?
You're still pinning them. So the women's revolution match, like I said, Big Mama Savannah Sweet. I'm not going to make any predictions on these on any of them, because I'm just going to enjoy the matches. You know, the next one, and this is one I know a lot of people are looking forward to, is the NWF Tri-State Championship match. Champion James Cross defending against Wildcat Chris Harris.
Yeah, people are into this with Chris Harris, alumni, what NWF Hall of Famer.
I don't think
Is he not a Hall of
he's
Famer yet?
not yet.
Oh man,
He's going. He will be though.
yeah, they're messing
Um,
up. They're
by the
but
way, for those of you who have not caught it, go check out Duke Loves Wrestling. His podcast. He just had Wildcat on there a few days
that's what
ago.
I saw actually. I did see that. I thought it was you, to be honest. And when I first
I
saw it,
did.
you tagged it. Yeah, you
I shared
shared.
a link. Yeah, on Facebook with it. Duke had not, oddly enough, and I'll have to ask him about it. I'll have to text him and ask him. He had not actually shared it on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Which I thought was kind of strange. I mean, maybe he just hadn't gotten around to it yet. So I shared it. I shared it from Apple Podcasts. Now, if obviously, if you don't have an iPhone, you're not going to be using Apple Podcasts. But if you look up Duke Loves Wrestling, you can on the other platform, especially, so I think his main one is iHeartRadio. He actually runs
iHeartRadio.
everything through iHeartRadio. So yeah. But
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that one is a by the way, Wildcat Chris Harris, I don't think people realize he's 50 years old. He is in phenomenal shape. I mean, he looks just absolutely, you wouldn't believe he's 50.
For me, I think this builds some sort of this is a bittersweet moment, if you ask me, for this match. And this is going to hit hard because if you know anything about Chris Harris and his past and his time, the goods and the bads, right? To
Mm-hmm.
be able to come back, not only to clean himself up, which he's done a tremendous job. I mean, he is a inspiration to those who want to get down that good path, right? And you ask yourself, or he doesn't just show that, but when you look at this match, he's like, not only he cleaned himself up, but he's helping, operate this organization and to get him back into the ring with NWF and to compete, win or loss. I think just going out there having a successful match is good enough for me.
Yeah. Oh, and last time I actually did see him and James Storm. I saw them wrestle as a team up in Chillicothe, before I got me. But I actually saw that, and I mean, he can still bring it. And I'm looking forward to, I think a lot of people are looking forward to that match. And James Cross is a very, very good opponent to do that about. I think James Cross, he's one. Um, if somebody were to say, okay, name somebody in the indie scene that could easily be on like one of the big companies, James Cross is it.
Oh
He is
yeah.
one of the, I mean, absolutely. James Cross, I mean, um he's a good talker. He's good in the ring. He has a move set that I don't think people understand. His skill set in the ring he could do just about anything. And by the way, he's apparently he has a legit black belt in some form of martial arts.
So as I look at James Cross, and this is a subjective to opinion. When I look at James Cross, I look at him as the JBL of NWF. That ultimate heel, he could kind of just do it, but he could also put somebody over.
Yeah.
He knows what to say. He knows how to antagonize the crowd. He knows, how to cross that line with others. He knows how to carry somebody in a match. He knows how to work somebody. He knows how to help someone come up in the system too. He's done a lot with Bone Crushers. And, that tri-state championship just looks so good on him. Okay. And everyone else that's just around him, whether they partner with him or they're his opponent, they just thrive to be a better, he brings the best out of people. This is, there is just nothing much more good to say. So that's why when I say, for me, he's the JBL of NWF. I'm talking about when he was JBL was the heel version on SmackDown, right? And he kind of, he knew how to pick the bone and get people, on that, to get people to not like him.
Tag team match, tag team championship. The champions, the Nasty Dynasty, which is Nasty Russ and Mr. Destiny, defending his challenger, the Box Office Blondes. They're no longer the Hollywood Blondes. Now they're calling them the Box Office Blondes.
Why is that?
Honestly, I don't know. If I really had to guess, and I'm just speculating, to be honest with you, they're not the first team to ever be called the Hollywood Blondes.
No.
Not by a long shot.
Wasn't that also their name before they separated for a moment?
Yeah.
So are they just revamping themselves, reimaging
It's the same. I mean, they're faces now instead of heels. Because that was the thing. I was there 2 years ago when, or was it 3 years ago? When Rex actually he refused to lay down for Swayze when Swayze was cashing in the golden ticket.
Yeah.
And that's when they broke up as a team. So that's why they went against each other for quite a while.
It's always fun to see those two guys in the ring. They just throw, and that's another team, team that, listen, they've been there. They done it. And, you could look, no matter how good or how bad their opponent is, it's going to be a good one, hell of a match. What do you think the strategy is going to be to tackle on Rex, though? I mean, he's a big dude.
Yeah, he is. Nasty Russ has been in the business a long time. He'll know what to do.
He knows what to do.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah. Mr. Destiny, of course, has only been in the business like a year and a half. But he's got Nasty Russ showing him what to do. Last match, and this is the NWF Heavyweight Championship, and that is champion Pompano Joe defending against challenger Lord Crew. This is a match that I am definitely looking forward to watching. Because Crew, I don't know if, his stock has been just rising.
Yeah.
Over the past year or so. He just did a tour Japan not so long ago. He was in Japan for like 2-3 weeks. He's been going all over the country. I actually watched him wrestle for the NWA World Title against EC3. That happened about 5 miles away from my house in Williamsburg, Ohio. Crew can go, and but Pompano Joe,
dude, you just ask yourself, why hasn't he been signed to somebody?
He's like right there.
He looks the part. He has all the X factors. He looks like a better version of EC3. But hey, don't underestimate Pompano Joe. He's been around for a while and he knows his stuff. He may not look like it. You look at the comparison. You got Lord Crew, who's just jacked, fit, ready to go. Mm-hmm. Pompano's kind of the opposite. But don't underestimate what Pompano Joe could do in the ring.
That's going to be a good one.
So my question is, I think Pompano could outlast Lord Crew.
Maybe. It's two faces against each other, though, because, Crew's a face. Pompano Joe's a face. So.
But the longer this match goes, you kind of do have to favor Joe.
I would say so, just because just because he's the champion. By the way, it's champion's advantage.
Right.
But Crew is when AEW the last time I think it was the last time they were in Cincinnati. I actually went to the show. It was always the only AEW show I've ever been to. And after they did Dynamite, then they did the tapings for Rampage. Crew was actually in one of the matches. He was one of the enhancement talents for that, which
Yeah.
honestly I hated seeing. I even told him that, and he's like, "I do." He's like, "Dude, a paycheck's a paycheck." I mean, he told me
Right.
that, but as he came out to the ring, of course, he didn't come out with any music because they're doing that for AEW, and he's not the main thing. He's the enhancement. You should have heard so many people in the crowd shouting, "Crew, Crew!" I mean,
Was
people
that
know who
his
he is.
yeah, man, that's listen, and I will say that to anybody who's coming up in the business. I haven't, but any opportunity you get, even if it's a squash match, you got to take it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, to see Crew out there, man, it's
And
just something. But
are
any shenanigans you predict possibly
and you know what? I'm looking at that. Those are those the only matches? I wonder if there's
from
any that.
me? There may be some warm up kickoff matches prior to the main
Well,
card,
Nick
like
Nick Ultima is the unified champion. That one's not even listed. MCE's not listed, and they're going to be having some matches.
so maybe they're
Um,
just up in the air about who they're
yeah,
facing. They're not the
or
official card because I've seen some of these things, especially with how big it is. You kind of kick off with like 3, 4 matches of a warm up matches as people settle in, and then you get that intermission, come back, and you really
right.
have your you know
Yep. So I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. The doors open for the Fan Fest at 4:30. The bell time, I believe, is at 6:30. The Fan Fest, you actually get to walk around. They have events for the kids. You can actually meet the wrestlers, and actually talk to them. I've always looked forward to that. You know, and
And that's what I love about with all this. You don't normally see it in the WWE or AEW where you do get that one-on-one reaction. Now, I remember when
especially not for
back,
free. You pay your admission fee, but like TNA, when they were in
yeah,
was in Newport, they had their tables set up, but they
you
weren't
had to pay
free,
like, yeah,
and
man,
you
that
had
was
to pay a
bad.
lot of money. I remember seeing that.
Now, I will
Yeah,
say that when SmackDown came back in April, I was informed that a lot of the wrestlers were out there on the riverbank just chilling out. And if you got down there like 8 hours early, then you
right,
were able to run into like the Miz. I remember a friend of ours would send me like pictures with the Miz and Maurice and everybody, right? You name it, they were on the list, and I got a picture with they got pictures with them. So there are rare opportunities, but when you take a look at these independents, like you go out there, you chat them up. If you look, they have knowledge. They're just people just like you and I, and hey, one day they may be your next big next world champion main eventing WrestleMania. I remember going to um, single A baseball games, Lake Elsinore, in California, and I would sit down with guys. Like I remember chatting it up with Alex Dickerson's father along the first base side. Now he plays for I don't know what team he plays for. He used to play for the Giants, but you just never know who they're going to be.
right.
So
So,
get out there, wish them luck because they're doing it to entertain you just like everybody else.
yep. So, Summer Sizzler, come out, Florence Y'all Stadium. Saturday night in Florence, Kentucky. Don't ask me for the address. I think it's probably on the promotion poster. You just put up, the Florence Y'all
Oh,
Stadium.
you can't miss it. You drive
You can't, yeah.
75 south. It's on your left hand side.
7950 Freedom Way in Florence. So,
It's
um,
past the Dave and Buster's.
but yeah, Justin, thank you so much for coming on again this week. I really appreciate it. Anytime you can, anytime you can come on, especially since we said we were going to do a review of SummerSlam, and then I got sick, and actually you were also sick. We were both sick
Yeah.
last week,
Yeah.
that just basically was not going to be happening. Because you hear our voices are now. Think about how bad they were last week. So, but yeah, hopefully you can go to Summer Sizzle. I know you said it's kind of up in the air right now, but hopefully I'll see you there.
Yeah,
But
we'll see what
until
happens.
Yep. For all our listeners out there, all the people watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in once again. And until we can actually meet again, I'll just say, hey, have a good one and God bless.